Welcome to Eventful Endeavors, secrets to crafting the perfect celebration. If you're planning an event and looking for useful tips from industry experts, you're in the right place. So get ready to take some notes and we'll dive right in. This is Eventful Endeavors.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Eventful Endeavors. Today we are back in Southern California. We're going to be talking wedding planning. I'm here with Kimberly, who is the creative force and business owner of Kimberlys Ever After Planning, a wedding planning service in Southern California. So first of all, thank you for being here, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I always start out the same way with everybody, which is just kind of asking how you got into the industry. Tell us your backstory, how it all began.
Oh my goodness. So it's a story.
Sure.
Well, my now husband and I, we met through Tinder. We both swiped right back in 2015.
Love it.
We had our first date at Disney, because why not? And then we got engaged. So fast forward to 2019, we got engaged at Disney. It's not in front of the castle. We actually were at one of the gazebos that they actually use, for ceremonies, but I didn't know that back then. We were supposed to get married March 29th of 2020, but then we had COVID. My wedding was canceled 2 weeks before it was supposed to happen, and Disney just charged us the final balance. And, there was supposed to just be the 2-week curve, right? So, they said, do you want to have a refund? Do you want to just wait? I'm like, I'm not planning my wedding again. So for all those couples out there, once you get to that 2-week mark, you do not want to start over. So
Yeah.
I postponed my wedding 7 times, and it was like, I moved it to May and then another date in May because it was just supposed to be 2 weeks. I mean, if you go back in time to 2020, no toilet paper. And we were just like, is this gonna, get better? And eventually I stopped telling people when the date was because I had to keep changing it. And, my grandma even said, would you just be like the first one, to get married? And wedding vendors know you have to book, that everyone has to align. Everyone has to have those dates. And finally, January 22nd, 2022, date doesn't mean anything to me. It was just a date Disney could do and I kept all my same vendors. That was super important to me. So my photographer, videographer, hair and makeup, all the same that was supposed to happen in 2020. I might have had a new bridal party because, people did show their true colors during COVID. And
Sure.
it was in through that, of postponing and planning and not having a great support system with my bridal party. I had a new bridal party. I made new friends during COVID. And I just realized I didn't want brides to experience what I experienced, which was a lot of loneliness and not people understanding. Just get married at the courthouse. I don't know how many times that was told to me. And then even at my wedding, I kind of did like a very nice, like, screw you guys, because I was just like, this day that everyone is loving right now, this is what I was waiting for. Because otherwise it's more of a vow renewal if you go to the courthouse. And I wanted to say I got legally married at Disneyland. So, I really try to give that support, that I know what it's like to be a bride, and the fact that no one cares about your wedding the way you do, except for me, because I want to be either your day of coordinator or your wedding planner. And I try to just bring that, authentic, like, I really do care. It's not just another wedding. But that's my story in a nutshell.
I like it because you've been through it. So do you do a lot of Disney weddings now? Like, do you plan a lot of Disney weddings? Do you mostly do Disney weddings? Like, because obviously you're a big Disney fan.
I'm a huge Disney fan, and, being a past Disney bride, I do love assisting. A lot of times Disney brides are very like type A, and they might not feel like they need a full wedding planner. So I've done, and it's all through word of mouth and referrals. But I do just as many Disney weddings as I do non-Disney weddings. Like, I've done weddings, Huntington Beach, all the way to Arizona and Flagstaff. So, and those are really fun because, of course, most Disney brides want, and I know this because I was one, want that happily ever after fairy tale. They come in on that carriage. I even had a Disney bride. She was really fun, and she came in on a fire truck. Like, Disney had a fire truck.
Really?
Yeah, so there's fun things Disney can do. However, Huntington Beach, where we met, I mean, we had some fun stuff, like, I don't know, dueling piano players. I mean,
That
So
was
there's
fun.
a lot of fun with outside of Disney weddings. So I try to just do it all and just make brides feel that they can be the center of attention for one day.
Right. So you kind of got into this into the post-COVID world,
Yeah,
which is interesting. So I talk to a lot of people who were like doing wedding planning prior to this and then how that
right,
changed and whatnot. So it's interesting you getting into it kind of after all this.
right.
So let me ask you this. What's the most, in starting to plan other people's weddings,
Yeah.
what's the thing that surprised you the most about doing that job, or the thing that you found the most interesting once you kind of got into that world?
So coming from just, hey, I'm a bride, I planned my wedding and
Yeah.
I want to do this for other people. So again, I didn't have a planner. Disney does provide you with somebody, but it wasn't like a full planner. There is a side to wedding planning that I never knew, and that was like you become a therapist. You
Yeah.
handle, I mean, I would say, I was thinking about this the other day. The planning research aspect is maybe a third of it. The other two-thirds are
Right.
just human interaction, caring about what that bride and groom have to say, maybe incorporating the groom more. I mean, I had a
Right.
bride call and say, oh my gosh, like I was previously married, but my divorce papers never went through. I'm still legally married. What do I do? I can't provide legal advice, but I can be there and just say, you know what, if obviously get a lawyer, maybe go that route.
Yeah.
But we don't tell anyone. Let's just make this a vow commitment ceremony. I've had brides, oh my gosh, like someone just died, like Kim, this wedding's not going to be the same without grandma. Okay, let's think this through. Like, how can we honor them? For me, for sure, it was just calming them down. I've had brides just call me crying, just, Kim, if it wasn't for
Right.
you, I would have canceled my wedding by now. It's really
Yeah.
just so my goal is when I talk to my couples is I want them to be just as excited as obviously as me, but I want them to be more excited about their day from when they started that call to the end of that call. So if they come to me and they're not very excited, they're having a bad day and I don't want to have my wedding anymore, I'm going to get you excited. Your day, it's going to be you. You really do feel like you're like Kim Kardashian or, somebody you have like
Yeah.
cameras following you, just if you feel like a celebrity for a day. And I try to put them in that mindset. And, a lot of times maybe the bride's mom can't do that or the maid of honor can't do that. You
Right.
always think, are they jealous or do they want to be the center of attention? And, I show up, I'm in all black, unless there's a theme and the bride specifically says, hey, come in dapper style or something. But I really try to give the brides what I didn't have, which was that support. Sorry. And
And you're good.
I just want them to have a good experience. Sorry, I get really
Yeah.
emotional on this. Because
I
I
love that. I
didn't
mean,
have
I
that.
love that you care so much. Like, I
So
think that's, I think having that kind of passion about it is what makes that relationship between, having a wedding planner
yeah.
so important, because you have somebody who's done this with, they've seen it all. I've done this
Right.
with tons of brides, tons of, I know this industry, I know what can work. So it's hard when you're just talking to a family member because
Right.
they're going to just kind of tell you what you want to hear. But like when you have
Right.
somebody in the industry, they're like, here's how we're going to get through this. I have a
Yeah.
plan for you.
There's definitely
So I
that
love that.
emotion side. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So let me ask you this then. So what's your first piece of advice you would give a couple who's newly engaged, other than like get a wedding planner? Because
Yeah. Oh,
obviously
yeah.
we all know that the
And
run.
just going with that is
Yeah,
communication is key. So please establish that budget because sometimes I'll get a couple and they're like, oh, we don't know what we're doing. And I'm just like, do you have an overall wedding budget? And then
right.
out of that overall wedding budget, do you have a number in mind for your wedding planner? Because a lot of times people don't realize exactly everything. So I always, and it's also hard as a wedding planner trying to establish your pricing too, because
Right.
every couple's different. Every couple might need more research, less research. Some brides are way more involved. But let's say, you ask me, Kim, I'm looking for a wedding planner, and I say, okay, let's just throw out a number of $7,500, and you're like, holy moly, 7,500, like for what? And if you think about the average person spends maybe 500 hours planning a wedding. So you take that
For
7,500,
sure.
that's $15 an hour. And that's not including the fact that I'm also there as your day of coordinator as well on that day.
Right.
But so when you break it into like, oh, you're only $15 an hour, it, and I'm one of those
Yeah.
planners where I always say, I don't want to add more stress. So I always offer like payment plans. I've had brides where they just sign the contract and they might be far out. And then when we get to that 1 year mark, they might give me maybe 20% of a deposit. But again, I'm not
Sure.
here to make the couple's lives more stressful. It's more just always having that communication, make sure you have that budget established. Are we able to go a little over budget if you're into flowers? I mean, always, I always say,
Yeah.
you can text me, email me anytime. And if I'm asleep, I'll get to you, normally within the next business days.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think that's so important because I went into my wedding so naive. I got married. So I had, just for your background, we were going
Yeah.
to get married in 2022. We were June of
Okay.
2020. So we also postponed. We weren't right on the cusp like you were. That's rough because you almost were able to probably have it.
Yeah.
But we were like, oh, we'll get married and the whole wedding will be $10,000. And we were
I
like,
actually have a couple
yeah,
that
that'll
just
be a
came at
thing.
me with a 10, and we're doing our best. It is, I think, we've both really been working with, my connections with vendors. Because of course as a planner, I establish
Sure.
relationships, but I think
Yeah,
it's going to be closer to 15,000 and they're perfectly fine with that. They knew there'd be some wiggle room, but it's like 200 people. So I'm like, I'm going to take this
that's a
on.
lot.
Like,
Yeah.
yes. Of course it is, a religious wedding. So they had, a very cost effective ceremony
Right.
location. So all that plays into it, but I hear
So,
you think 10 grand. Yeah.
and let me ask this: do you do a lot of? Because it sounds like you've got a lot of relationships with these people. Do you do a lot of full planning, or do you do a lot of partial planning? What's your kind of main thing? What are you mostly doing?
Great question. Right now, so when I first started, just a few years ago, full planning, and I was just taking on all these couples and figuring out how to. And this is my full job because I actually had someone ask me like, "I'm getting married on a Wednesday. Are you going to be available?" I'm like, "Yes." Like if I will be there. This is my job. I used to
Yeah,
work at Starbucks. I used to work at Disney too, but all those things. And then COVID happened and I'm just jumping in
sure,
as a wedding planner. So it's primarily full planning and just day of because so
cool.
if you were to take, and again, Disney is amazing. Disney gives you, a planner and they really help you. They ask you, for example, hey, Sean, what do you and your fiance like? What are you thinking? And then they expect you to, respond. Sometimes
Right.
you're like, well, Disney, like, what do you have to offer? And that's where I come in.
Yeah.
Maybe I can help, jog your memory, but or with what you would like. But day of's been very popular right now, and I don't know if it has to do with COVID or just brides and budget, and then just really wanting someone to be there on that day, establishing that timeline. I always say, your day of is there for you. It's not like a venue coordinator where they are there representing
Right.
the venue. I've had it where the DJ was 2 hours early and lost. And while I'm trying to set up and do 100 things, I will be out there. I will go get that DJ, bring
Yeah.
them to your venue coordinator is not going to do that. I am all about the couple, their experience, and and again, just that communication. That was my major in college. So I think that's just goes into everything, but primarily full planning and then day of. If there's a couple
Yeah.
that's like, Kim, I already know my venue, I already have my photographer. And every couple is different, so sometimes I just create a quote. I'm like, what's your budget, what's your, let's find a win-win, especially if we're a good match. I'm not for everybody. I love couples that want kind of to feel that center of attention, maybe that fairy tale. It could be a modern fairy tale. I just did a wedding where it was just pink flowers everywhere and she looked like Barbie. It was
Yeah.
fabulous. But if we're
Right.
not connecting or it does not hurt my feelings, just let me know. Hey, Kim, thanks for your time. And it goes both ways. There are
Yeah.
some couples where I'm like, oh my gosh, they're amazing. I want to be a part of their day so bad. And, they're, you won't, it's a relationship,
And it's like that with a lot of vendors. I mean, I always tell people when I like when I talk to new leads that come in or brides or grooms that are looking to get married, I started looking at it a while back where it's like, I don't feel like I'm auditioning myself. I'm like, you're auditioning for me. Like, do I want to work with
Fair,
you guys?
fair.
Like, are we vibing? Is this going to be cool?
Yeah.
And then usually it's like, oh yeah, okay. I like you guys. This will be fun. And the same with me. Like if it's not the thing, I don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. Like, I'm not going to force you to do it just
Yeah,
to
no
book
hard
it. You know
feelings.
what I mean?
And I know
Yeah.
something very
Um,
popular. It's like, you send your pricing and then they ghost you. And it's like there's nothing
yeah.
wrong saying, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks." And I'm like, sometimes it hurts because I might feel like we're vibing. They might be like, I'm not vibing with, yeah, I mean, who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah.
I'm putting it out there for anybody who listens to this, brides or grooms. I don't mind if you email me and say, I'm sorry, you're too expensive for me, or I'm sorry, we're going to go a different direction. I'm
Right.
not going to be upset. I'm not even going to pressure you to change your mind. I'm like, okay, cool. Like,
Yep.
I'm not hurt by it, but just answer. Just because otherwise I'm going to keep email because it's on my list
I
to
know,
do.
because
And I'm
you
like,
get
now,
attached a little bit, especially if you
yeah, I'm
had
like,
like a
now I
call
want to
with them.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to know. I just want to know. Just
Yeah.
tell me, you know? So yeah, I do love that. That's so, it's a thing that happens all the time. I do want to try a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm just going off of memory here, but you, when I worked that wedding with you, I think it
Mhm.
was your husband actually who does photo as
Yes.
well. Like, so do you guys kind of sometimes do like this package thing where you also bring in photo? And I know you mentioned you have a 360 photo booth. So
Yes, that is
talk a little bit about
beautiful.
that stuff.
So it's funny because I kind of started again. I got married to my husband, so that is part
Right.
of the story. And he kind of became my main assistant, kind of a thing. And we're
Sure.
now like this husband and wife team. I do have other assistants that are amazing.
Yeah.
But now we have a 360 photo booth, and I don't really have packages where that's immediately included. I always, bring that up like, hey, just so you know, we have this photo booth. And the whole reason I got it was because I got a quote. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was a 360 photo booth for like $2,500 just for the reception. I don't remember what that came with. I don't know what style. And I was just, and I'm sure there are some couples that can totally afford it, but I'm like, I do not want my couple
Yeah.
spending that much when I could totally do it for like a fraction of that. And it'll be my
Right.
husband running it. We have props. If it's a Disney wedding, we have Mickey ears. If it's a not, well, you can still love Disney and want the Mickey ears, but we have wigs. We have signs.
Right.
It's really fun. But my biggest goal is, and not to be like a one-stop shop, but to get these couples and find ways to save them money, and then maybe put that money towards something they really love. Like maybe like that really nice pair of shoes that we're going to put that money towards, a really expensive photo booth. Now they can get that, maybe that Jimmy Choo pair. Who knows? You never know,
Yeah.
but saving
I
saving my
like it.
couples money. I love it. And then allocating it to maybe more flowers. Who knows? Whatever they want. It always comes back to them
Y-
anyway.
Somebody, yeah, somebody mentioned to me, well, I think it was one of the wedding planners I chatted with on here who equated, like real estate to wedding planning. They're like,
I
look, if you're going to buy a house, you're going to need a realtor. They might cost a little money, but at the end of the day, they're going to hopefully save you money elsewhere. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like, I was like, it's probably true. They'll get better deals on vendors. You won't get
Right.
ripped off because they're going to know what these things should cost.
Right.
And yeah, $2,500 for a 360 photo booth. I'm not judging whoever charged that.
No,
If they can sell it, that's great. I can tell you straight up, I paid a fraction of that. I had one at my wedding and it was not that
right,
much,
right.
you know?
And it's funny because I do have
So
my real estate license for California, but I don't practice. But it was just funny that
there
you
you
said that.
go.
I'm like, hey, I totally get your
Yeah.
reference.
And you're
Yeah,
not the only one. There's so many wedding planners I've talked to who were like in real estate and now do
yeah.
this. And I'm like, there's something there where it's so similar because it's the same thing. You build
Customer
relationships with
service.
people.
It's
Yeah.
well, when you think again, buying a house in California, I live in an apartment. You really paint that picture, and I feel like that's what planners do. And then if you're doing full planning, I am with my couple for sometimes a year, maybe over a year.
Right.
And you really, you always hear that joke where it's like you might be a wedding planner if all your friends are either vendors or your brides,
Yeah.
and that's what I strive for is getting that connection and that trust, and you know, all the way up to executing their day and making sure they are, that center of attention. They're having the best day ever. And I always say, I know I did my job if I can turn to them at the end and say, are you ready you want that vow renewal? And they're like, yes, I
Yeah.
want the vow renewal. They're not saying they're going to do it, but that they're having such a wonderful time that they're like, I could totally do this again.
Cool. I like it. I have two questions I like to ask. These are just kind of
Oh,
fun
no.
questions.
Okay.
They're just for me. They're just for me.
All right.
The first one is, what's the most unique thing you've seen at a wedding? Like, something that you're like, oh, that was really, really cool. Like I know the one we did had like, was it Bossa Nova
Well,
dancer or
that's
something?
literally the
Like,
first thing I thought
yeah, was that
of
what you were gonna
was
say? Yeah.
and they were a fun couple. You know, they've each been married before, and
Yeah.
so this is second wedding. And I find when couples have been married before, they know what they liked and they know what they didn't like. You know,
Right.
not just the spouse that they had, but you know, like just elements of their wedding. And
Right.
yes, they came out. One of the first things we booked were bossa nova dancers,
Yeah, that was
and
cool.
I had never done that before, and I found a great company to book, and you were there because guess what? They wanted dueling piano players, and
They
I
had
my
everything, man.
well, and it was funny because I used to go to a place in Claremont called you know, Piano, and I'm like, would they do it? And of course, you know, that's just my non-planner brain because I'm
Right.
like, oh, this is where I go, and you know, and it was a blast. Dueling pianos, bossa nova dancers. I've had a wedding that had mariachi. You know, like
Yeah.
just the music and but of course, if you want to ask, you know, me the Disney answer, I mean, I had a bride.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, she had so much fun. She took her guests and they went into the park to see the fireworks. And they had, you know, a designated
Awesome.
station. Also, if your budget can allow, you can do a ride buyout. I mean, we're talking money,
What,
but
like you
I
just
mean,
ride the Pirates of the Caribbean with your bridal
so
party all
so
day or
let's
something?
say you're coming at me, you know, you're like, Kim, I love this Disneyland idea. And of course there's a huge difference between Disneyland and Disney World. And
Sure.
I've done a little Disney World, but I, you know, my heart's with Disneyland. That's my home park. So you
Sure.
can, for a nice chunk of change, rent out Pirates of the Caribbean after park hours. You will be escorted with Disney. You would book all that through, you know, Disney Fairy Tale Weddings, and you would get that ride for an hour, and you could ride it as many times as you want. Yep, it's really cool. You know, my
That's
husband and
awesome.
I weren't blessed with that experience, but you know, you could even do like World of Color and have your designated section. So again, that's the Disney answer. If and again, I've seen you know, the mariachi band at Disney as well. So again,
Yeah.
I don't like totally focusing on Disney. That's just, you know, that's, I do love it. But I mean,
Of course.
dueling
Yeah. Yeah.
piano, I know I keep going back to it. Dueling piano. I mean, if there's something where you're like, you know, Kim, this is our story, you know, can we incorporate fireworks? You know what? There are venues that have fireworks. It doesn't have to be a Disney
Yeah.
wedding.
Yeah.
You know, I love beach weddings. Those are so fun because a lot of times you don't have to have your wedding on the beach, but the venue will take you down to the beach with your photographer and videographer, and you'll get your photos that way. But to me,
Yeah.
still the bossa nova dancers, because that was just something, you know,
Very cool.
I had not done before. And of course, dueling pianos, you and your wife nailed it. And I
That was
saw
fun.
some of the footage from the, you know, the videographer and the photographers, and everyone had a good time. And so the reason we had you guys, and I didn't know it was going to be you, was because the groom did
Yeah.
not like to dance. Did not want a first dance.
Right.
No father, again, they're older couple, and they wanted to get their guests excited. And I mean, I think they were on the dance floor while you were playing Sweet Caroline at one point. You know,
Well,
touching,
that's the
pink.
funny
You know,
thing. They told us they were like, they don't really want to dance. So
yep,
we weren't trying to dance them. And then I think it might have been you or somebody
yeah,
came up to me and was like, they want to dance. And I was like, all right.
I
Now,
know.
then we started playing party music. I
And
was like, they did want
that's
to dance. All
huge.
right.
I mean, it's knowing
Yeah.
vendors, and I'm very big on this. So again, if you're a past couple that had a wedding, you have planners that are like, this is our timeline and we're sticking to it. I'm not that planner. I'm like, this is your rough draft, because I've had a bride that was like, Kim, we had the shoe game listed. I love the shoe game, but she was like, I just want to
All
dance.
right.
I'm over this. I'm over the formalities. I just want,
Cut it.
yeah. And you know,
Yeah.
I work with the DJ and we cut it, but you know, and I
Yeah,
love,
we cut our dollar dance in the middle
yeah,
of our wedding. We were supposed to do it, and I was like, "That thing's gonna take 20 minutes. Can we just start
yeah.
partying? Let's go." And my wife was
And
like, "Yeah,
that's a thing.
let's go."
That is a thing.
Yeah,
And you know, and I love, gosh, and I know that the question was like, what unique things, but to me, I did a wedding in LA. They jumped the broom because that was their culture. You know, I've been to a payback ceremony. I'm working a wedding in a week or two, and they're doing a tea ceremony because that's their culture. And I'm learning so many things.
right.
You know, just I that's not my culture, so I didn't do it, but gosh, I can appreciate so much more from, you know, other cultures, just being a wedding planner. And
Yeah,
what they normally do at a wedding. It's so much fun, especially when they put on that red dress, and they do their fun
Yeah,
ceremony. Oh, and you learn why they're doing what they're doing.
I know.
It's a blast.
It's so much fun. But then my other part of this question, and this is my actual favorite question,
Oh,
is
yeah.
what's the you got anything that pops to mind like horror stories or cringiest thing you've ever seen or something that's gone wrong that you're like, oh. Or
And
if you can't think of
yeah.
that, then something you recommend no couple should ever do. One of those kind of things. Like we've
And
all
it's
seen some
funny.
things.
I'm always just the big believer. Whatever the couple wants, let's give it to them,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a thing. But for me as a planner, I always hold my breath during the cake cutting because I know how much that bride spent on hair and makeup. And I don't know if couples talk about it. My husband and I, we talked about before, no smashing of the cake. But there are
No.
couples that are all for it. I had a wedding where the bride, I don't know, to my mother, it might be cringy. To me, it wasn't. She wanted, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of it. There was a specific type of beer or something, or, in her hand at all
Yeah.
times. And I loved that because that was unique for her. So I made sure she had her drink of choice at all times. Where my mom of a different generation is like, really? She wants that in all her photos. And I'm like, yep, that's her. That's what makes her unique. And they took shots like before their first dance. They took shots or no, I saw one. It was a father daughter. They did shots. And it was like right before their first dance, and it was just very comical. Again, that's not cringy, but
Yeah.
depending on your generation, maybe it is.
I
But the
think it's
cake,
funny. I would love that.
I love it, and I'm all about. And again, I love the traditions. I just spoke with the bride yesterday. We were talking about the garter toss. She's like, I'm not into that, and I'm like, so you don't want to lap dance in front of your family and friends? But you know what? My husband was all for it. He didn't quite give me a lap dance, but my DJ was awesome. And he's like, Kim's dad, father of the bride, if you want to leave the room, now's your moment. And it was a big joke. And, but as far as
Yeah.
cringy, but I'll tell you from a and this might be a photographer too. And
Sure.
again, this is just my biggest pet peeve is when the photographers, videographers are about to go into the reception room or the ceremony, whatever it is, and guests are trying to save their seat with their purses. And these
Oh, yeah.
couples are spending so much money and they might be all about those detail photos. So for me, it's not about me, but if I know my couple and photos are
Right.
their number one, they don't want to see, Aunt Sue's purse, you know,
No.
especially if there's a seating chart too, like we will make sure you get a seat at your, assigned spot. But to me, from a planner's perspective, it's those little things. And again, I just go back to what the couple wanted. If the couple doesn't care, I don't care. If they're like, my
Cool.
guests can come save spots, then awesome.
I
But
love it.
those to me are like the pie in the face, the cake in the face.
Right. The cake in the
'Cause,
face.
man,
Yeah.
yeah, because hair and
Especially if you
makeup
don't
is not
talk
cheap.
about it, then it could be awkward.
That is, and I think again, everything's what Instagram and Reels now, but they're like, that could be a red flag if
Mm-hmm.
they don't talk about it. And the husband, I mean, I've read on Reddit, there are
Those.
some stories. Sometimes the marriages don't
Yeah.
last. I mean, I don't know, but
All because of the cake in the
it
face,
comes back to
man. We got to
communication.
talk about
Yes.
it.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Well, listen, we're about wrapped up here. So is there anything else before we call it quits that you want to say? Anything about your company? Anything you want to give a shout out to? Whatever it might be before we kind of wrap it all up?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest thing, the biggest question I get is why should I hire a wedding planner when the
Sure.
venue has a wedding planner? And I think I said this already, just the wedding
Yeah.
planner from your venue is all about the venue. They're not going to be 100% focused on you. They're not going to be 100% focused on your guests. They are primarily concerned with the venue and what you have contracted with them. And like I said, I am there, and I've held brides' hands through everything. I have brides that are very type A and they're like, no, Kim, we already got our guest book. We don't need help finding, guest books and all that stuff. And, but just mainly really look into the differences between a venue planner,
Sure.
venue coordinator versus an outside one. That goes to Disney brides too. It's always nice having someone that's gone through it, and of course to make sure they're
Yeah.
insured. You want to make sure
Yeah.
your vendors
For
are
sure.
insured.
That
And
needs to
just
be a thing for sure.
that, and I will say certain venues have different standards. As calling out to the vendors out there with their minimums. Some minimums are a lot higher than
Right.
others. But yeah, I would just say, and for anyone who's thinking about being a wedding planner, you know, yes, the research is part of it, but please like think about the couple's experience and how that could affect you. I mean, there are times where I'm like, I need a margarita after this call because the bride just went on and on about all these things that were like heavy on her heart and her shoulders, and I'm taking them off of her. And then what do I do with that emotion? And yeah, I go get a
Right.
margarita, It's just as long as they feel better.
Yep.
But yeah.
So
And I don't
go
just
get a
do Disney
margarita
weddings.
with the
That was
bride.
another thing I wanted to say. Love Disney weddings,
Yeah.
but I do love
Yeah, we didn't do
yeah.
a Disney wedding. Ours wasn't Disney. Ours was
Well, maybe your vow
everything, but it
renewal
was
might. I
everything.
don't know, Sean.
You
Just
never
kidding.
know. You never know. But anyway, yes, listen, thank you for doing this again. I appreciate it. This was awesome. And we'll definitely link to all your stuff, websites, everything, so people know where to find you. But yeah, this was great. Thank you, Dana. I love
Thank you
when
so
we work
much. I had
together at that
fun.
wedding. Yeah.
I can get
I
back
hope
to
we
my
get to work
coffee.
together again soon. Yes, I'm gonna get back to mine as well.
Definitely. And thank you so much for having me. I
Thank
had
you.
so much fun.
You got it. Have a great
Thanks.
rest of your day, all right?
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Eventful Endeavors, Secrets to Crafting the Perfect Celebration. We hope to have left you with some actionable ideas for your own event. If you like the show, please subscribe and definitely leave us a review. We read every comment. So until next time, happy planning and see you soon on Eventful Endeavors.